and welcome in to the River of the Real. Wow, kicked me off of that, or immediately kicked me out of that background. But anyways, tried. I don't have to look into that, getting better. But anyways, as you know, if you're with me on my previous recordings, sorry about that. This light went out. We're going to light it back up. On my recent recordings, I mentioned, and glad you guys are here as we deep dive. I'm coming at you today, something I've talked about I was going to do, and I decided today to do it. Before we get into it, as I'm going to dance the dance and look at certain aspects of this. Glad you're here, but let me tell the story is through the process of my last few videos and the processes of a chemical, right? Leakage over here in a city called Garden Grove. Last night it was announced that 68% of the people, 50,000 people who were not living at home, who were out and about, evacuated, were allowed to go home. So it was 50,000, 34 of them went home yesterday, and I'm not sure where we're at the rest, but I kind of seen something earlier that would make me to believe maybe it's teetering on everybody going home because it said it won't be an explosion, it's safe, and everything else. And I said, they came and saved the day. Glad for it. How much of it really is, I don't know. You weren't allowed there, and news can be very vigilant of doop, but I'm not saying it is for sure. Just saying I don't believe all I see and very little of what I hear from a system that doesn't give you that which to hear in a false reality of that which you need to hear with the inner ear and the inner eyes that can awaken see through all the shades and the veils are being lifted on many realms to actually catch it, see it, photograph it, record it, maybe even a movie. But anyways, yes, so for anybody that was displaced or anything, but then I heard actually one went off in Washington, people died, and it exploded. And I was like, we weren't hearing about this one in the state of Washington. Somebody had just set me on, and I didn't go deep in reading it. I glanced over it before I went on. So that's kind of where we're at. So for us, good. You know, it's good. Seems to be all cleared. I personally did not have to evacuate or was not told to because it never came that close to me. The closest it was for about 48 to 72 hours of the border of evacuation was about 2 miles away, which isn't far, but not super close. So we never got that. It decreased another mile last night, and I don't know exactly where we're at today, but 68% of the people were able to go to their homes last night or yesterday. So that's good for them. Good for them. So, through all the days, not being pressured, but a little bit, it weighs on you. But you try to not have it have a way, right? If you got to go, you just got to go. You got to stay in pocket. I worked jobs that I've seen crises at, working in mental health, so I was able to stay in pocket. And then when you see people in crisis, if things go down, I was able, mindset would be to assist anybody else, especially people who would need assistance more with children or seniors. Even though I'd be a senior helping a senior, I definitely can, because some seniors, maybe not in the health I'm in. But we're going away. I was talking about the feminine energy recently. A lot of the listeners here are in the pocket of it and have ears to hear, and thank those who do, and those who are aware, and those who want. I'm not sure when this will go up because I got 3 I haven't even edited with it. Will be seen before this, but also know on the 27th and 30, and then after, I think I'm doing this one video today, and then immediately I'm going to go into editing a couple of them, at least 1, possibly 2, which would be ended up being the 2nd and the 5th of June. So yes, we're ending May. We're about the halfway point of the year already. And it's very funny, and it's not funny, but it's real for those who carry the knowledge and gnosis and experience it. But I'm seeing a lot of videos from them who aren't so-called enlightened, but seeing the world differently and starting to. And at a certain point, something's happening. A lot of people that I wouldn't even call in the conscious community or that are making videos talking about how time seems to be just speeding up. Speeding up. Time is very much speeding up. And they think it's fast. And they're saying, and these are people I would not say their channels are conscious community at all, are like saying these type of things that we say in these type of spaces, right? But this, I just couldn't help but help myself notice that two of them had popped up and they're talking about how time seems to be very, very fast. The slip of the day, 24 hours seems to be a slip of a day, and how a minute can be a lifetime when I feel this way. Tell me what song that is. I know what song it is. Can you tell me? And the answer is true. I probably will be going here in the very near future because I really am seeing, feeling, and hearing this aspect of time, how it's been wrapped up to us, how this planet Saturn, Kronos, devours its children. What is this telling us? And how time is really, possibly, a freaking illusion. That it's really the illusions of time. And you might say, ooh, the hush. On a level that you definitely, them who are connecting their gnosis would go, wow, aha, I see and hear, because notice how time, there's an aspect of time being worshipped. As I will close this out real quick, just think about this. And you may say, well, how's time worshipped? By his story. Also, when you worship Saturn, and everything Jesus said about Saturn, and how in that time they had this feast called Saturnalia, and how every country, every place, every time always had the planet Saturn as a very, very high place within their structures of religion or secret societies. Saturn's very high placed in the planets. Notice they're connected to nets. Is that because time is even part of the trapping of the soul? Time is an illusion. But that's a whole different story. But this story does lead to that story. This story I'm saying now, I'm going to be simmering in it and preparing in it because it's going to be a deeper dive for me now. It'll be probably my next deep dive. What is time? I had these dreams about this, and I went to bed with this meditation last night. As I mentioned this in the last one about the passwords, right, that will be released. As I speak, it's not out, but I believe it's going to come out on the 27th or 30th about the passwords. But we're going to get into something I had mentioned before. And I even mentioned recently how the feminine aspect from Tiamat to Isis to the feminine aspect by the patriarchy has been stifled, pushed down to not really wanting to know her story because it's been transformed to his story in this simulation of the power and what's the written program within it. It has to return, but when does it return? Why did a certain aspect of two Christianities again, two versions of so-called the same religion, your Gnostic Jesus, your Roman Jesus, not the same on every aspect of the story, to being that even this aspect of, we were told, and many people believed, even though it was denied way back in 1960 something, and it was told that it was a mistake, and we got apologies from the heads of Rome. Like, I take that with like a grain of salt. But anyways, painted Mary Magdalene, Pope Gregory, 5th century, painted her as a harlot, where that's not written in the book one time. But when I really deep dive into the esotericism of the story, into the Nag Hammadi library, which was the most erased bunch of information ever, yes, of all, that they erased it and attempted to erase it. But some good old folks, Gnostics definitely, took the library and hid it under earth, for they knew that them who were coming to make war, burn, steal, and murder, were coming after them, but they had the knowledge, gnosis, maybe even told through their gnosis, I'm not doubting that, bury this here, and at the appropriate time it would be found when it's needed, and that is what's happening now. And in this story, Miss Magdalene is, we're going to deep dive into what she is today. Are you ready to take what Foghat would say a slow ride? I know I put a little bit, probably over 10 minutes. If I looked at what time we are, if this is 2 parts, it will be 2 parts. If not, we'll get it in one. Let's see what we can do here. But let's get started. So, connection between the Mary Magdalene and the dragon line stems from modern esoteric literature, alternative history, and New Age spirituality. New Age, yeah, a lot of it is mixed. It's a bundle of mix-up. But anyways, rather than canonical biblical scripture or mainstream archaeology, and a lot of this is garbage and lies. I'm just going to tell you what it is. Especially with the canonical, because we can go there and dissect this part by part and reveal it, and you take the veil off and say, this is what you got here. A historical, political movement. But then they even apologize. Why would you apologize something in the 1600s? I mean, from something that happened 1,500 years ago, and then, 1,500 years ago by a pope who said this, that many people just bought it and believed it. Even a lot of people who were Protestants, this has been in their doctrine, that she was this. Just, this literal lie. I'm not surprised because liars lie, and I'll leave it at that. But, so the concept of the dragon bloodline is an esoteric, pseudo-historical context, which I don't buy at all. I'm going to tell you right now, if this is AI saying this, I'm going to call a punk a punk and that ever. This is definitely something traced back to even Tiamat, and many say even past. Because when you hide and you only want his story, the patriarch story, you will erase her story and then call it pseudo-historical. Oh yeah, we rolling today. Does not refer to literal reptilians. Instead, it's used metaphorically or mythology to describe ancient royal lineages of spiritual adepts, high priests, and keepers of sacred hidden wisdom. The Holy Grail connection, popularized by books like The Holy Blood, The Holy Grail, Lawrence Gardner's Genesis of Grail, Kings. The theory claims Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married and had children. I really have never dived into that. I really don't look at that. I mean, I would see this more differently because the Gnostics haven't said it, but also I do know there could be books who have said that. The Merovingian dynasty, according to these alternative histories, Mary Magdalene fled to the south of France after the crucifixion, carrying the child Jesus, Mary Magdalene in the south, carrying the child of Jesus. Okay, got it. The sacred lineages allegedly eventually formed the Merovingian dynasty of the French kings, Grail of kings as dragons, and these specific fringe theories. The term dragons tied to the ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, Celtic titles such as Pendragon, where rulers were anointed with oil, metaphorically linked to dragon fat to signify their divine right to rule and their spiritual enlightenment. In contemporary New Age goddess movements, Mary Magdalene is frequently claimed as a central figure stripped of her traditional biblical framing. And we went over the stripping of this by Rome, who, when you want to run behind the canonized version, there's just a lot of history. It shows all that goes with that, unless you don't want to hear and don't have ears to hear. I can go on for 3 hours and break down aspects of that and show you all what it's connected to from past, from Babylon to all this stuff, even in the wear of what they wear. But this is not what it's about. This is showing you, what I'm showing is there a lineage connected to priests that were initiated, and even initiated men, right, to their gnosis. Mary Magdalene, or Magdalene Dragon Priesthood, modern spiritual groups honor Mary, because the name Mary is not the name. It was a title for the priestess who were the initiators. You say, what? Want me to show you? Mary was a title. The perspective that Mary was initiate temple title rather than a mere given name is a cornerstone alternative history. It's her history, not his. I'm going to drive that home today. And esoteric, not exoteric, spirituality in these traditions. The multiple Marys around Jesus, Mary the Mother, Mary Magdalene, Mary of Bethany, Mary Solem, were not coincidence of popular first century Jewish naming, but a designation of their spiritual rank and temple function. The Egyptian origin, Mary, mainstream, Miriam, originally during the Israel captivity in Egypt. The root in ancient Egypt, the root word for that translates directly to beloved. The high title was heavily used in royal priest titles, beloved, Egyptian mystery schools. So let's go back to where we were before. I just had to go there to kind of show you about Mary. We got a lot to cover. I just wanted to show you about the name Mary was a title. It was a high priestess title, meaning she was the highest of the so-called apostles. She would be the 13th apostle of apostles. That's why in this stories, she's the teacher. The others haven't came and tapped in. Their origin is still holding religious concepts, and she was having divine gnosis. That's why some men, and it was usually Peter, who the church made the top dog, because he held their concepts. And even in the story, if you go to the canonized version, Peter is always the one that lacked faith and belief and understanding, even in their belief system. And even in their belief systems in the canonized version, Paul said Peter was still preaching dead letter, keeping the law, while he was talking about, I'm bringing the Christ in you, the living God. So we see Peter follow this even in the canonized version. There's no running from it. Grail of the Kings. In these specific French theories, the term dragon is used, and then this is why I'm going to get the lineage. Ancient Sumerian, Egypt, Celtic rulers of sacred oil, metaphorically linked to dragon fat. Dragon. In temporary age, the movements, Mary Magdalene is frequently reclaimed as a central figure stripped of traditional biblical training. We went into the dragon priestess lines. Let's talk about that a little bit more. Modern spiritual groups often honor Mary Magdalene just not as a disciple, but a high priestess of the Roge lineage or the dragon line. In this framework, the dragon represents Kundalini energy. That's the dragon. The Kundalini represents the dragon line that runs down your spine and the codes and the knowledge that goes from them, because it's not about getting knowledge. It's about also adding wisdom. And wisdom would be something that you would have to go past a bachelor's degree, because you can't be a bachelor unless you get when you go into the bridal chamber. The framework: the dragon represents Kundalini energy, earthly energy lines, ley lines, and the primordial wisdom of the divine spiritual feminine. The serpent. Historically, the snake or serpent was a symbolic of wisdom, healing, transformation in pre-Christian ancient mystery schools. Esoteric link: Mary Magdalene of these schools portraying herself as the avatar Sophia, divine wisdom, who embodied the serpent energy powers. Oh yeah. What are we establishing is the feminine, like I've been saying, the feminine aspect is being smashed down by the patriarch to have control of this physical realm and plane. There's the aspect of the feminine aspect who, in the Gnostic story, where there's no rib removed, there ain't no rib dent on that one, the story would actually be that she came with the serpent, which is the awakening, right? The serpent's not traditional Christianity demonized something that nobody ever did. Dogma, indoctrination, exoteric, divided, denominations. I could take all those words and break it down. Denominations are also ones, fives, tens, 20s, 50s, and 100s, and I've told you that before. And the only thing else called that is your Lutheran church and your Baptist church. And that's just two of the many thousands who are not in unity and neither fellowship with each other, neither plan to. Ooh, I'm just setting the stage. This is what the histories did with religion. No knowledge, simulac. These women aspect of this is just not as being women. This is also something happening within men and women that you need to align. The feminine within you with the masculine within you, which would be the electromagnetic aspect of the heart for coherence with electromagnetic, which is like even the snake hissing, and the mind of man, the mind part, the man part, coming in coherence and raising that logical one side where the two become one, and this would be called the bridal chamber in in Gnostic Christianity. I do take some of the other, but some of the other, I see the hijinks and don't, looking at that, because there's different depths of the story that make more sense when you wake up and see this. In the Bible, the New Testament, she's identified as a Jewish woman from Galilee, born of Magdala, who once cured of 7 demons and becomes one of the Jesus' primary followers and financial supporters. Let's see the other story. In Gnostic Gospels, Mary and Philip portray her as having the unique spiritual intimacy with Jesus and receiving hidden teachings which laid the initial foundation of later esoteric truth. I'm not going to call it folklore, but they contain a mention of physical bloodline or dragon lines, because you're able to secure your kundalini by steps and by codes and by transformation within. As you're researching the type from alternative history, like the Grail or no New Age here. Let's go down a little farther. Forcing the lineage further back connects the Mary's archetype back to Isis, Inanna, and the primordial dragon goddess Tiamat. I'm going to show you how this is in Gnosticism. It's Mary, right? Or what's Mary Magdalene, you see that. You see Isis and Inanna, and then you see Tiamat, primordial. So when you go into Gnosticism, there's a primordial aspect of this, the thought, first thought. It's called first thought, and it's called Barbello. And it's a feminine aspect. It's the primordial aspect of Tiamat in Gnosticism. Before Sophia, before Mary Magdalene, her name's Barbello. And I haven't talked enough about Barbello. I may be diving, and we're going to go back and read a few of the scriptures about first thought with Barbello. Tiamat is the primordial, from the very essence of all that is, the very essence of the beginning, the very essence of that pool, the very essence of the dark, the very essence of that which is primordial from the beginning. The primordial beginning in the story with Tiamat, we see who did the primordial aspect of Marduk went after Tiamat in a war, right? He wanted to shut the humans up because he wanted to rest. And the humans he wanted to shut up, the ones Tiamat and the primordial was waking up. So Mary, Isis, Inanna, Tiamat, but also in the Gnostic story you're looking at, this would be Barbello. Barbello. Many of you who know this may know. Barbello. She's first thought out of the pleroma. And from the monad, first thought. The first thought is Barbello, the primordial dragon mother. And you're looking at pre-patriarchal. So what I'm seeing in this, before the patriarchal came in, was the feminine aspect, the matriarch. And I know some people are, we can't have that. We see what it's doing now. You're looking at the lower level of the physical, ran through governments who operate on shadow distancing, because all they do is shadow programming. The schools aren't worth the crap, and all that programming from this level of the archons, the structures and all that come through what they do through the very limited, it would be like the shadow self of femininity, because it has a shadow. Everything does in this when it goes into the physical. Tiamat, the primordial chaos dragon. So right away in there, she's called the dragon. This is the bloodline that we'll be talking about, is the primordial ocean dragon, the original mother of all creations, cosmic tearing. The myth recounts her violent destruction by a solar patriarchal god named Marduk, right? We went over, who splits her body into the fashion of physical world with the zodiac and creates it out of her body. The esoteric meaning in deep esoteric thought represents the suppression of the original indigenous androgynous divine feminine. Tiamat's dragon blood is viewed as the original cosmic blueprint, the primary container of the divine spark, sleeping DNA memories, and humanity holds. Inanna and Ishtar. The resurrected queens of heaven, as the primordial dragon myths evolved into the structured pantheons, right, multiples. Tiamat's raw feminine power traditions, Samaria and Akkadian goddesses like Inanna and Ishtar. The descent and resurrection, long before the biblical narrative, long before the biblical canonized narrative, this guy got to let that compete, long before the biblical canonized narrative, Inanna descended in the underworld, stripped of her royal vestments. Remember? Stripped. I went through this. We did the stripping. You have to strip off your old clothing, which is all that comes through the process of the 7 planets, and I just believe in it. I just see it now, the zodiac. All your false identities. Hung on a meat hook for 3 days and rose again. Yeah, that story sounds like it came a little later, too. One identity, a little different, but the same stuff. 3 days, rose again. Serpent symbol. Inanna was ultimately led to the sacred tree. Notice we're dealing with a tree again, a sacred tree. And the serpent representing fertility, cosmic cycles, and raw Kundalini power. Exorcists note that the sacred egg long led to the Inanna Ashtari, later became the primary symbol carried by Mary Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene red egg. Isis, the high priest, we're talking about Isis now, or Egypt, Kemet, and the mistress of the waters. Notice Tiamat was from where? The waters. Who it's the same explicitly tied to the stellar and dragon landlines through the cosmic alignments with a heliacal rising of the Sirius, the resurrection mysteries. Just as Isis gathered in the sacred pieces of her murdered husband Osiris to resurrect him, Magdalene is a primary witness who goes into the tomb of Jesus to facilitate the resurrection. Mary title. Esoteric asserts Mary or Miriam or Mary was not just a name but an ancient Egyptian temple title meaning beloved or mistress of the waters. Traditions with modern mystery schools claim Mary Magdalene was an initiate of the cult of Isis, trained in the alchemical arts of life, death, and unity. The return of Sophia fire. By the time the lineage reaches the 1st century, Judah, the primordial dragon, the energy of Tiamat, and the magical sovereign of Isis are mapped out into Mary Magdalene. The 7 powers in the biblical text. Jesus cast out the 7 demons out of Mary. In Gnostic texts is like the Pistis Sophia. They're interpreted as the 7 archonic blockages of veils, or the levels of the planet. That's what it is. We're getting ready of that old canonized indoctrination talk and talk the talk and walk the walk. That's what that was, an allegory. But of course they don't teach allegories at church. They tell you everything's literal. Because they're not going to, and I don't have to tell you that. They don't teach it. Because it's just goot goot and bak bak, I call it. Left-hand path. So notice this, the clearing of the 7 blockages were the casting out of the demons of each parts of the archonic blockages, connected also to the 7 chakras, right? Overcoming represents clearing of the chakras led to the fire of Sophia, or the Kundalini energy rise freely, which is the dragon. The left-hand path, Mary Magdalene represents the descending Christ, or the lunar right-handed mystery side. Here are this. Rather than the physical bloodline, her dragon lineage is celebrated as a genetic spiritual transmission of the soul remembrance to who they are. The remembrance that you were having forgetfulness because you drink a cup, that we've already had that cup. The soul remembrance meant to awaken the suppressed divine spark within the human consciousness. If you're exploring this and tracking the feminine lineages relates to human genetics or conscious evolution, we can deep dive in how the monastics viewed the divine spark, epinoia. And let me see if there's anything else. No, we got more. I would do that, but we'll skip ahead. The perspective Mary was initiated in the temple rather than a mere name is a cornerstone of alternative history, her story, and esoteric spirituality, the hidden knowledge. In these traditions, the multiple Marys around Jesus, Mother Mary, Mary of Bethany, Mary Salome, were not coincidence of popular first naming, but designation of a spiritual rank within the function of the priestess and the temple. The Egyptian origin, I think we read, means beloved. I think we read some of this. Semitic Hebrew meanings mistress and seed. Miriam, right? Related to associations. You would find this probably more in the Kabbalah than you are in the book that in the West we know of. You would find this would be in the Kabbalah, Kalbion. The name frequently translates the Hebrew Mariam to mean mistress of the sea, the lady of the sea. Now we're talking what? We're talking the dragon sea. The ancient paganism, the waters represented the primordial chaos like Tiamat, or the cosmic womb. To be the mistress of the water meant having mystery over the astral planes, intuition, and creation. The mastery over the astral planes, meaning you know the codes. That's why Mary in now knew the codes, how to ascend out of being stuck and dealing with the 7 archons within the 7 levels. And the better see, Marmar in Hebrew means bitterness. In a priestly context, it did not mean angry. It referred to the bitter cup of suffering, transmutation, and the heavy burden undergoing spiritual initiation. The dark night of the soul. Aramaic Mar, Lord and Master. In the language Jesus and Mary Magdalene spoke Aramaic, the root was an expected title of reverence, meaning master or Lord. Wow. She was a top-notch teacher. She was the feminine aspect to Jesus' physical male aspect. Within the codes, calling Mary Magdalene Mariam was a dual acknowledgement of her being both beloved and a spiritual master in her own right. The esoteric implication: if Mary is a little, then Mary the mother, Mary Magdalene, were not just a mother and a companion. They were hierarchs of anchoring spiritual lineages of women, where the history didn't tell you, because his story will never tell you, because it's trying to rule by power. Mary the mother held the title as the master of birth mysteries, bringing spirit into master, while Mary Magdalene held the title as master of death, resurrection mysteries, and the consciousness with the divine, uniting the consciousness with the divine. Oh, we got through it all. We got through it all. Oh, actually, we got one more part to get in, I guess. I knew there was more to this. We got another part to get to this, and we'll get there. See, I'm already at 37 minutes, so let's get to there. I don't think I have to do 2. Let's do this. Let's get on this. Where are we at? Let's share this. We're going to get on this. It shouldn't be very long, but we're going to talk about something that was mentioned earlier. The rose codes or the red codes. It's really the red codes. Mary Magdalene rose codes are spiritual frequencies and archetypal teachings dedicated to the divine feminine. The center reclaiming self-sovereignty, healing emotional wounds, and balancing masculine and feminine energies throughout through unconditional love. Key themes associated with these teachings include moving past historical suppression to embody the original balanced teachings of the sacred union. The rose symbolism. The rose represents grounded power, divine love, while the white and black rose represents purity and transformation cycles of death and rebirth. The chalice. Consciousness, viewing the body as a vessel of the Holy Grail, aligning heart, womb, and the pineal gland to higher octaves of light. For practical exploration, you can deeper your connection through various online spaces for channel resources, and you can. Lineage courses, I've looked at them, to the Red Books of Initiations, definitely is one. Awakening the Mary, Auto Healing, that's the Lineage courses. Auto Healing, Experience and Frequency, Activation, Local Transmissions, focusing on the Mary Magdalene lineage, such as the teachings discussed in Awakening the Mary Magdalene Code. Historical Modern Perspectives, that would explores like the historical hidden will now be heard. There's codes, and why I wanted to share that as we go off, so we're at the 40-minute mark right there, is that these codes and these practices that I had shared on a previous video also goes with it, of alignment, coding. Now this is technology. This isn't just some woo-woo in the mist. You got to look in the mist to find it. It was actually made hardened sense that you would use these templates and use this to be able to govern your map to ascend after death. See, death has nothing to do with you leave one place and magically appear in another place like some cereal commercial we used to talk about, the magic, right? It was actually a process of knowing how to walk, move, and know the codes from the 7 seals that it talked about, that Mary talked about, which was like the 7 chakras, 7 planets, 7 archons, right? And know how to maneuver. And that's why I said on the last video when I finished is, this is like above, below. When I want to go to Japan, Mexico, Europe, or anywhere, I need something to cross over the border to be accepted. And what is that? It's called a passport. This is codes are for you to passport from each realm. Same as above, same as below. Not everything was hunky-dory, blueberries and ice cream. It's not. It's not. That's what the New Age movement tried to make it. That's where it's weak and discredited with a lot of stuff. To me, it just is. Not everything's namaste. Do I believe in namaste? Yeah, but not everything's namaste. When you're fighting against principalities on high places, this mentions, is the archons. This is mentioned before that. We talked about this as mentioned in every aspect of it. That's why in Egypt it was a preparation. You need to go to bed, and also a preparation to wake up, and a preparation of sleep is to prepare to die, because you need to go on. This is the tour. This is the journey, is when you pass the physical body, and this is when you're more apt to be caught by the electromagnetic, because you're going to, if you chase the light, you're chasing the reincarnations again. It's a false light. And I mentioned that on previous videos. It's a false light. The white light can be the false light at times. Why? It's the most fragmented light. Or if you take the gold light, it's not. Don't chase the light, walk the path. It's an inner knowledge, it's a map, and some of these practices are the map, and deep dive into it. Those things that when you see me, go look them up and tap into them. Because I'm going to. But I've also shared with you some of the breathing techniques on a former video to use, and use this to sleep. What really woke me up is my preparation to sleep, and how my dreams have totally went into other spaces and places, and the reality of this has really hit me. In closing, thank you guys for everything. I appreciate you. Please give if you would. Let me put this on there, and might as well use it if I'm going to use it, because I have it. Please give if you would. It costs money. It's time, studying, and there's some things that plain cost money. And I believe you'd be blessed to help. If this has helped you in any way to ascend, wake up out of where you were at and go to another level, it would be mighty great for you to do it, and definitely give. And I would be appreciated you for that without the bottom of my heart. Also, I did some background check on the reality. And I won't tell you why I'm saying this, but I'll tell you this. I found out in holograms, to get brighter colors in the holograms, you need plasma. So that answers my plasma question with with another friend of mine that we talk here, Patty. There you go. Holograms and plasma go together. But you guys have a great, great day. And remember, I know the women get excited about this, but I'm going to refer this back to the men. The feminine and masculine is within you, and you need the coherence too, because we tend to be more logical, and in common sense ways in a physical world, logic makes sense. It does. But if you're going to wake up and hear the ears to hear and eyes to see, it takes a marriage of within you, your feminine aspect, your heart, your other brain, side of the brain, to activate intuition and gnosis, and all this is definitely connected to the feminine aspect. And the great coupling of the bridal chamber mystery is the bridal chamber comes together when the feminine and masculine go into oneness unity. So men, it's in you too. Women, it's in you, because you got masculine in you. Energy. Physically, you're one gender. But there's aspects of both that are in you. This is a spiritual walk, an inner walk. The kingdom is within you. There's all. If you want to know how to get out, you got to go in. You guys have a great day.